Hello, it's the Book Traveller, and today I am in Frankfurt in Germany, Europe, and what a lovely start to the day. I'm in a hotel quite in the centre of the business district of Frankfurt today. Um, Fantastic views from my windows here. Behind me, looking kind of to the north, out into northern Frankfurt, but also to just in the distance, you can see the hill line there. That's the Taunus Nature Reserve. And as I sit here, just looking out this other window, which you can't see, but and I can't see the river either, but the main river runs all the way around to over my right hand shoulder, eventually meets up with the Rhine River, just around about a town called Mainz and near Wiesbaden, another beautiful village town in Germany, just outside Frankfurt. Beautiful place to visit, especially in the summer. But as you can see just behind me, some typically European Germanic housing just stretching out to the north into the hills there. Absolutely lovely place to live. I'm very jealous. I wish I had this view or their view out over the nature reserve. It'd be absolutely lovely. But today I'm going to catch up with some more reading and getting closer to the end of the sanctuary, and we're going to complete or start reading chapter 4. Bit of coffee first. Always nice. So, chapter 24. I said farewell to Fentiman without revealing the reasons I had wanted to know about John, although she chuckled again as if to suggest she knew far more than I did about the matter. As I left the admin hub, the first batch of administrators were arriving at their desks, still yawning. I moved past them swiftly enough, and the night watchman Bianca had been speaking to gave me a nod. He looked at me curiously as if my face was arranged in an unusual manner, but there was no need for that because I felt quite all right and there was nothing wrong. Nothing at all. Bianca and I had agreed to meet back at the cottage, but when I got there, I found only a note wedged into the doorframe where anyone could read it. Come to the SC. The writing was a scrawl, quite unlike Kara's beautiful copperplate, the product of long hours of calligraphy in girlhood, the toils that proved she would make something of her life. That Kara had made the time to improve herself to lay her own path upwards, while Bianca had retained this scrawl. It reaffirmed what I thought of both of them. For all her friendliness, Bianca had the carelessness of the rich, had not inherited her father's diligence. I wondered whether Francis or Joanna had seen the note. The cool air of the morning had burned off by now. My journey to the stone circle was long, nearly 2 hours of walking, and I could feel myself sweating whenever the path was not shaded by trees. When I arrived, Bianca was already there, lying along one of the central stones in the sun, sinuous and feline, still as a sphinx. She did not move at the sound of my footsteps, and I had another momentary sensation of having rounded a corner and arrived suddenly on a scene from the deep past, this time the scene of a sacrifice. I thought of the archaeologist John had introduced me to on our visit here. I'm not sure Latham would approve of you being up there. Let him disapprove. He's a fraud anyway. She twisted her legs around and pulled her body upright. Did you phone? I told her what Fentiman had told me. Aramanth Partners. She rolled the words around her mouth with wonder, and her face broke into a bitter smile. Well done. Ben, I didn't really think you'd make contact. I'm still not sure if it tells us anything useful about him or anything damning. You're very trusting. Ever since you arrived here, you've let this place weigh you down feather by feather, and now you're too comfortable to move. I approached and squinted up at her silhouette. She reached out for me to help her down. I offered her my hand. The skin of her hands was softer than I had anticipated, perfectly smooth despite the rocks she'd scrambled up. I'd hardly touched anyone in my time on the island. She and I were very close to each other now. She turned my hand over in her own. Look at that. All healed. Healed by the magic of Sir John. She smiled at me. What you just said wasn't fair. No? No, I pulled my hand free. I've made my way here through a difficult land, and I've been free to make up my mind about what I found. I've experienced both ways of living, and I can tell you it's better here than on the mainland. You wouldn't mind never leaving? You wouldn't mind if the tunnel closed forever? It's hard to imagine anything the mainland could offer me now. What about everyone you've ever loved? Your family, your friends, all the rest of humanity struggling alone together? I have no family, and the rest of humanity are just like the people here, except they don't have a plan. Did you phone the mainland estate too? Did you ask about Kara? He showed me messages from her, Bianca, letters and memos. She's coming back any day now. He promised. She still hasn't written to you, though. The small voice mocked me. Oh, sweet Ben. He can make an elephant, but you think he can't mock up a letter? She was manipulative, but she was right. I was spared the need to reply, not that I could think of fitting a response, when she turned on her heel. Come with me. She crossed the bare earth and left the stone circle on the path north, parallel with the island's cliffs. After half a mile or so, she turned off into the woods, picking her way through the underbrush towards the cliff edge, stubborn as a mountain goat. Eventually, I saw the tree line that meant the cliffs were just ahead. She stepped out, a few paces before me, and gestured for me to come closer and look at something at her feet. The air was much colder out here beyond the trees. To our left stood the Devil's Chessmen. Impossibly ancient. To our right, the cliff extended away, dwindling to nothingness. I advanced slowly, unwilling to stand so close to the island's edge, and looked down. Before us, cut into the side of the rock, was a stairway. The steps were steep, of uneven heights, and coated with slime and mould. But they led down out of sight towards the blackened sea, what lapped at the shore beneath. What is it? It's the only other way off the island. Leads down to a rock beach, sheltered too, and not too difficult to get out to sea. There are caves at the base. How did you find it? About 10 years ago, I was walking the whole edge to see if I could. I don't think anyone's done it before. I doubt it was Fellingham's people who built it. It seems older than that. Maybe it was the original inhabitants. Perhaps it was sacred, or a last resort. I looked down the stair again to where it rounded a huge boulder and disappeared along the wall of rock. Who else knows about it? Nobody. Nobody else knows the island like I do. Why are you showing me this? Because I think you might need it one day soon. I thought of Kara and the decision this place was slowly revealing to me. I could stay here, part of the world to come, but in a world that could be meaningless if I didn't have Kara, or return to the mainland, to the decaying world I knew. I wanted to stay here, to turn my eyes away from everything. I had seen that didn't fit, and yet I knew I could not leave Pemberley until I had pinned the real man to the canvas. I know why I wanted to know more about John, but why do you, Bianca? Why is it so important to find out about his childhood? She looked at me directly then, and I saw a little of her father's stubbornness and strength. We all have a right to know where we came from, what we are made of, and what we are capable of, being created and then denied an explanation. With no more sense of yourself than an animal, I feel no better than that poor elephant. I sighed. Well, we have the name of the law firm, but they won't tell us anything. I imagine he owns them too. What if you had his real name? I thought of Fentiman's comments about John's surname. How do you know Pemberley isn't his real name? It's one of the only facts about him my mother told me. She wrote it in one of her last letters. As I was born, he told her he wanted to have something of himself, his real self. God knows why, just a moment of weakness, I suspect. Then he got a grip of himself, and she never learned anything more of his real life from then on. But he told her name he was born under. She tried to find out more, but even that was protected, something to do with his childhood. She never found out anything else. What is it? Jacob Mann. It's from the Bible. Jacob was the son of Isaac, born holding the heel of his brother Esau. She glanced over the edge of the cliff, down to the rocks below. It means, he who supplants. When we got back to the stone circle, I offered to walk back with Bianca, but she declined with a sudden hauteur and scrambled back up her rock, resuming her former pose and stillness. She did not look at me as I left. I drove back in the cart she had brought, at her instruction. The morning was high now, and I did not want to miss today's painting session. I had told Bianca I would look into the matter further, despite my loyalty to John. If asked about my state of mind, then a few days before the island's closure, I would have said that I simply wanted to find any additional connections between John's past and my own. His childhood sounded just like mine. An absent father, a constant worried search for meaning, a talent that only reached fruition in his teenage years. The more I knew of our common history, the closer we would be. It was, even then, all about John. Driving these paths, hearing the birdsong etched on the air around me, it still felt impossible that the presiding genie of this place had any malice in his heart. Yet Bianca commented, "He can make an elephant, but you think you can't mock up a letter," would not leave me alone. John was waiting outside the lodge, sitting in one of the pine chairs he had spent the last week working on. Monroe was there too, and they were looking over blueprints of some kind. I felt great relief on seeing him. He was still solid, strong body of the present day, a man of action and ideas combined, not the weak, lonely, childish spectre Fentiman had raised. As I greeted him, I had to struggle not to call him Jacob, and I wondered how he would react if I did. As it was, he merely turned, cursed my lateness, then dismissed Monroe and climbed the stairs to the studio. During that morning's session, I managed to raise the subject of our school again. Fentiman could have been lying about her acquaintance with him. Of course, could have been confusing him with someone else. I should test the matter at least, and he need never know I was doing it. I told him about my career had started, and it was natural to bring up my first significant teacher cautiously. Sarah Fentiman. Yes, she'd been at Hillcrest for decades, had probably been there since. Forgive me, I didn't mean to mention it. No, that's all right. Describe her. A tall woman, quite broad as well, wore glasses with those large teardrop lenses, or she did when I was there anyway. Curly hair, quite short and close. I think probably brown when she was younger. Fentiman. Fentiman. He frowned, and I could tell for a second he had never met her. She had been making it up. It was all a fabrication, and I could let the matter rest there. Then he spoke again. Yes, I think I knew her. Quite funny, wasn't she? Sarcastic. Got the sense she felt herself a cut above the place. That's right. I felt a terrible disappointment, but I had prepared my next question, and I couldn't avoid asking it now. She was very friendly, a bit overfamiliar, trying to make friends with my mother, even though she was just dropping me at the start of term. She used to sit by the gate all day and have a chat with everyone as they arrived and left. Did she do the same with you? Yes, absolutely. So annoying, it held up all the queue for ages. I remember sitting about 5 cars back, seeing her have her little leaving chat with each parent. Do you remember that, waiting in the queue and seeing her talk to everyone? Yes, absolutely, but I didn't have to tell him not to smile at the recollection because his face had not moved a bit. Did you have to travel far each term? Not far, no. An edge had entered his voice, and I let the conversation lapse. There were lots of reasons why his parents might have never removed him from the school. He might have been a simple orphan, looked after by the law firm Fentiman had mentioned. The firm might have arranged for him to stay over the holidays. And those sad memories would provide a perfectly reasonable explanation for why he would lie to me, why he would prefer not to tell me anything about his meaningful years at Hillcrest. Even as I tried to think all this, moving back and forth between the canvas and my spot near the door, I knew I was struggling to believe it. But even if I wanted to leave, I could not. I had a more important question I wanted to ask. John, I need to know. Kara will be back in time, won't she, before the island's closure? Of course she will. I spoke to her this morning, Ben. If you'd been here on time, you could have spoken to her too. Her boat is booked. She's looking forward to seeing you. You're kidding. I assure you I'm not. He smiled for a moment, pleased by my shock. It's going to be tight, but there's no way we'd leave her off the island. I was struggling to keep my composure. Well, that's wonderful. I didn't voice the treacherous thought that followed. It's only wonderful if you're telling the truth. But if he was, Kara knew I was here and my troubles were as good as ended, and she'll definitely be back before the closure. Ben, if she's not back by the day before the closure, I will personally see you onto the last boat returning to the mainland. I'll reunite the pair of you if it kills me. My heart felt lighter than it had done for days. I felt guilty about the call I had made to Fentiman earlier this morning, about my collusion with Bianca. Kara's return was guaranteed. John himself had said so. All would be well. But for the rest of the session, as I observed the way the light fell on him and on the twin image by his side, I saw discomfort on both faces. The man I had built up layer by layer upon the canvas was in pain, but that pain was not the only new element present. There was malice too, and deception and vengefulness, but all showing in their slightest aspects, like minor chords or the faintest ripples from a pond-dropped stone. Let's go to chapter 25. I spent the afternoon walking the island, dazed by its beauty. I had painted a few landscapes before, yet everywhere I looked, I saw vistas any painter would dream of depicting, and one phrase kept returning to my head over and over. When Kara is back. When Kara is back, we will walk this path, and if she has not noticed it before, I will point out this view to her and bring her delight. When Kara is back, she will tell me the truth about Bianca, when she's honest, or whether her stories about her father are the lurid concoctions of a troubled girl who never grew up. When Kara is back. The prospect that Kara was not coming back, of course, that she had chosen to stay on the mainland, had outgrown this place, or the prospect of spending her time here with me was not one I allowed myself to think about. I managed to make myself late for the evening meal, and once I reached the hub, I hurried to the top table. John was deep in conversation with Monroe. Knight was talking to tonight's guests, and Bianca was gazing down into her bowl. My place had been cleared, and for a lurching second I thought my deception, my phone call to the mainland, had already been discovered. I had been uprooted from the island. All that remained was the removal of my body. The image of my predecessor, Thomas, lying in the cold ground, wherever these people kept their human remains, recurred to me quite beyond my choice. Then John spoke and removed my doubts. Ben, we were practically sending out search parties. He waved a hand. The cutlery that had been removed from my space was replaced in a few seconds, and a plate, scallops, still steaming from the kitchen and topped with fragrant slivers of sea herbs, followed it. You're worrying yourself to death over this painting. That's why you've lost track of time. For God's sake, I'm not getting older and that fast. If you don't like this one, we don't have to put it on display at the closing ceremony. Or we can position it so far from the crowd they don't see it, and take my word, it's a work of genius. He rattled on, and I realized I was in no trouble. He was warmer than his usual self tonight. The fierce edge he carried with him most of the time was sheathed. The idea that he could have anything sinister planned seemed so stupid most of the time, but the doubts of my first days here were back, and now at least I had more to find, much more. I would search tomorrow. Aramonth Partners. Jacob Mann. I must not blurt out any of those words, no matter how much they filled my head. From 2 places over, Bianca gave me a long, inquiring look, and I smiled, trying to be normal, suggested with a look that I would talk to her later. There was a lot of discussion that night of how the final preparations were coming along. Our guests, a metalworker and a clothier, had a great deal of insight into the process, into how the long final consignments of raw materials could be recycled for, and how many years' independence from the mainland they would buy us. The big question, of course, is what comes next. In what way? Well, John stabbed with his fork for emphasis. Who develops faster, of course, us or the mainland? Surely it's them. I had spoken rashly, too interested in what he was saying to filter my responses, and his attention turned to me immediately, hawkish. Why's that? I would have thought, simply, that if they have millions of people and that we have a few thousand, irrelevant. If you have a smaller number of people who have expertise and motivation, you can innovate much more, especially if you're not constantly patching the problems of 100 years ago. I suppose so. I guarantee it. Look at Jason and Helena here. Tonight's guests looked up, young and confident. Helena has completely changed the way we recycle our clothing. Now we have machinery that cuts the cotton we need by 4/5. Jason is a metallurgist, an alchemist to you and me. His work on titanium fracturing will keep your factories working far better throughout the winter months. And these are just 2 of the people here. A few thousand people trained right and with the proper apprentices can provide the seed for an entire population. Toba, Knight muttered. Quite right, exactly right. And if any of you familiar with the Toba eruption? I shook my head, as did our guests. 75,000 years ago, a volcano in Indonesia explodes. One of the largest explosions in the history of the planet. Sun blocked out. Humans are reduced to just 10,000 individuals, maybe even fewer. He tipped one of the empty bottles on the table over and tapped on the slim neck with his knife. An almost random reduction to almost nothing. But look what happened once they got through. He waved a hand in the air. The greatest civilizations in history, just a few tens of thousands of years later. Lesson? Knight spoke. It doesn't matter if you have a bottleneck, as long as you have the right people to get through it. Exactly. This place is the seed for a whole new way of living, because at the other end of the bottleneck, he smiled, paradise. He beamed around and we beamed back. The only person who didn't glance up at him and smile was Bianca, and I saw a muscle twitch in his cheek as he looked at her, surveying her plate. Don't you think so, daughter? I was just wondering what would happen if this cataclysm comes to the rest of the world, like you love predicting so much, and it comes here too. She looked down as she said it, meaning John had to lean into her and kept her eyes fixed on her plate once she'd finished speaking. Well, in that case, B, we're all in big trouble, but I think you knew that already. It'd be like working hard to bring a child into this world who doesn't appreciate anything you do or the efforts you make on their behalf. Bianca's only response was to rise from the table. As she stood, she gave me a brief glance. Then she turned and walked slowly away along the aisle. John gestured as if he wanted to rise too, but Knight very gently placed her hand on his arm as if to dissuade him. He looked round and smiled. Very unusual medical trouble there. Adolescence, extended to the age of nearly 30. The weak joke broke the tension and the conversation turned. We kept it going until I realised with some relief that the meal was over and the others were standing to leave. Excuse me. As I walked through the darkness towards the cottage, I reflected on what I had learned. All I knew was that John's education had been funded by this law firm, that Bianca claimed he had been called Jacob a man at birth, that he had deceived me over his schooling. Of course, Bianca might have been misinformed by her mother, and her mother might have been misinformed by John himself. He could have set her along the wrong path, deliberately made sure the only clue to his identity was a dead end. He didn't seem too paranoid at all for a man who could create this kind of distance between himself and the world. What was ahead of me? The cottage again. Francis and Joanna and their ostentatious happiness, the sound of them moving around preparing to sleep on the other side of the wall, and for me nothing but an empty bed. No, I could not face returning to the cottage yet. I would walk on and return later, once they were asleep. Where then? Further into the dark, I turned back and looked for the narrowest of the paths leading from the hall. The path towards the lodge was too well known to me. I searched again around the edges and found another worm of light at my feet, almost extinguished by the vegetation on either side. This would do. This was a path obscure enough that I would meet nobody else on it. As I moved, I heard Kara's voice reproaching me. I'd been doing this more and more in the last week or so, conjuring her up. It was a way of staying sure of the details of her, keeping her bright and clear in my mind, and not letting her fade away. But even the Kara I summoned to myself was unwilling to comfort me, or tell me only what I desired to hear. You don't know anything about John, but you love him anyway. I'm finding out more every day. I bet you didn't manage to find out his original name. I spoke the words out loud to nothing but the trees around me, and still heard her reply, as clear as if she stood before me on the path. You don't even know what he's working towards. You're helping him build his world with no clue what's going to look like, and you think somehow you're going to fit in. You did the same, and I know why I'm doing it. He's given me the chance to create a work that will last. That's more than any of us can hope for in this life. She's flirting with you, you know. Who? I kept speaking to cover the sudden silence, muttering my way through the darkened woods. I don't know who you mean. But I heard no more from her. I was starting to lose my reason here. I knew the voice I was hearing was nothing but my own refracted fears of Bianca's claims about this place, and yet wherever that voice had come from, wasn't it right about my own feelings for the island and for John? It was impossible not to admire him, to want to work for him, to want to learn the way he thought and develop my own thoughts in that direction too. My feelings about him were so confused I could hardly keep the two sides in my head. As to the other point, Bianca may have flirted with me a little in her naive way, but nobody who had seen us together could possibly think I returned those feelings. And Kara was the one who had come here in the first place, had brought everything of herself to the surface of this man, only to vanish again. She had disappeared, failed to return, failed to call, and yet I was the one responsible when someone took an interest in me. Nobody could blame me for the way things had developed since I arrived. I wasn't responsible. You never have been, whispered another voice, this time my own. Whenever I came to a junction between two paths, I took the less used of the two, narrower, narrower still, until all I could see was a tiny wriggle of light at my feet, interrupted by the leaves growing over it. I was totally lost now, the woods thick around me, yet I felt I was no more than a mile from John's lodge. I stopped when I saw a solitary cottage ahead, one I had never seen before. It was a squat building almost totally overgrown by the trees crowding in on it, and its windows were suspicious, squinting eyes. One of them was lit, and inside stood a familiar outline. I recognized the short hair, the bulk of the torso at once. If my thoughts had been clearer, I would have waited, calmed myself, repaired my dishevelled appearance. Instead, I approached. My feet crunched on the gravel, and Angela Knight opened the door before I could even knock. She wore an austere wrap, with one end trailing down, giving her the look of a half-undone mummy. Good evening, Ben. What happens after the island is closed? She sighed and turned. Come in. She shuffled down the narrow corridor, onto which the front door opened and pushed aside the curtain, leading into a low-ceilinged and cramped parlour. It felt like a room from a century ago. Framed photos clustered on small, polished tables. A fireplace held a vase of artfully arranged leaves. Above the fireplace, a portrait of some mustachioed ancestor kept watch, frigid and disapproving. What is this place? I knew how rude I sounded, but I could not stop myself. She shrugged. It's my home. There are some benefits to long service with Sir John, although I dare say you'll never find out. I repeated the question I had on the doorstep, and she sighed again, as though speaking to an elderly relative asking a question for the 20th time. After the island is closed, we carry on as before. I don't know what kind of lurid answer you're expecting, but there will be no sacrifices before the standing stones, no maypoles. We will take no money. Quite the opposite, actually. Sir John has beggared himself, making this place proof against the world. Why have you all been preparing the island as if it's about to be besieged? We are simply laying in supplies like we have done every year for almost 3 decades. This time we will merely attempt to survive without depleting our resources. Sir John thinks we can do it, and I'm inclined to agree. Those who doubt him have seldom been proven right. Is that why he treats his daughter like that? Because she doubts him? I don't know what you mean by like that. I haven't noticed him treating her any differently from the rest of us. The way he addresses her doesn't seem strange to you? Unkind, deliberately so? He's putting up with so much from that girl. She's not even a girl, she's your age, and she's repaid him with nothing but pain. Knight sniffed, as if even discussing Bianca was beneath her. In any case, I'm not surprised you feel like that, given what? She's just showing off to impress you, trying to show you how independent from her father she is. It's kind of a primitive attempt at seduction, I suppose, although I don't think you'd be wise to reciprocate. I'm here for Kara. I was, but saying her name made me think of the madness of this place, and Kara had seldom seemed as far away as in that moment. I had to remind myself of the bigger question I needed to ask. I thought of Thomas's notebook, of this desperation, and said it. What's in the 41st hex? Knight smiled, uncertain, as though wondering the best way to humour me and my stupid question. There is no 41st hex, Ben. You know what I mean, whatever you call it. The bit that's cordoned off. Is it something to do with the rats? It's no great secret. There's a biosecure storage facility for the millions of species samples we have. It is the pride of my working life. It's staffed by a small team of islanders who observe strict safety protocols. And if that is as secret as we get, if there is something else, I would know about it. Your lovely wife-to-be would know. She smiled again. I was feeling increasingly unsure. People have said it exists. It does. The facility is where we store our samples. What extra mysterious thing is meant to be there, Ben? I know every man and woman who works there. I could name every one to you now. Then what did... I didn't want to say anything about Thomas's notebook. Why is nobody allowed to go near it? Because to release an invasive species here without the proper planning would destroy the balance of life. Quite destroy it. I nodded and she carried on. I hadn't realized before how soothing her voice was. Is there anything else you want to know? You must feel comfortable on the island, Ben. John values your work here. What does he want? Do you know? Does anyone? Of course I know, and if you look into your heart, you do too. John wants peace on earth. He wants to halt the suffering we see around us, day after day, the slaughter of everything not human, the pillaging. Even all his resources are nothing but a tiny candle against the darkness outside. But he is trying to show them with writing on the wall. She looked at me closely. I think you're terribly tired. Her voice was soft, and I was grateful for her tact. Do you think you should maybe go home and rest? I did feel exhausted in that moment. Perhaps I should. She led me to the door, but before I had a chance to step through it, she gripped my arm tight and leaned close. Don't you trust him, Ben? Do you really not believe Sir John has your best interests at heart? Of course I trust him. And for a brief moment I did. I remembered all my previous suspicions and doubts, and how each time my worries had been soothed away. That's good, Ben. I do too. I know he wants the best for all of us. He's the presiding spirit of this place, and that's why you must have the faith in what he's doing, just like I do and Kara does. He is doing something so precious for us and the rest of the world, although they don't know it. He's a wonderful young man. Her eyes shone. Good night, Ben. I bade her good night and left, down the path, until it rounded a tree. I felt her eyes on my back with every step I took, and for a few minutes I kept walking on the path that would take me back to my own cottage. Then I stopped and quietly doubled back until Knight's home was just in sight once again, through the trees. The woods were dark enough that just 4 or 5 feet away from the path, a prone body could not be seen by anyone passing. I lay down in the dirt among the ferns, smelling the rich, crumbling loam beneath me, and before long I was rewarded by the sight of Angela Knight, her face blank, leaving her cottage and moving swiftly around its side. For a second I faced a choice, whether to follow her or to try and enter the cottage somehow. I followed. I wasn't sure I trusted John any more, but even if I did, Knight was another matter entirely. Knight had made her way around the back of her home and taken another path at its rear. There was a third path leading away from her cottage, heading off to the side, but I had seen her take the broader one at the back. The night was so dark that all I had to judge my movements was the slim strip of light at my feet. I had to guess her speed, hang far enough behind that my own progress could not be heard. Twice the path forked or wavered, and I lost her. Twice I found her trail again, after an agonizing minute of stumbling in the dark, trying all the time to stay as quiet as possible, avoiding anything that might snap or crunch beneath my feet. My body was in an agony of tension, my breath sounded like bellows in my ears. Eventually the tree line opened and revealed, across 100 feet of lawn, John's lodge. The chapel on the ground floor had a light burning in the window, and I saw bodies moving around it, behind it. I moved a quarter of the way round, concealed by the trees, then approached across the lawn in an area with no lit windows overlooking it. Finally, I crept round until I was beneath the chapel. Knows about it and asked me directly. An inquiring mind. He can't be let alone. On the contrary, he must be. Why? You wouldn't want my portrait to go unfinished, would you? John, she sounded like a schoolmistress scolding a naughty charge. I thought you'd learned seriousness. He should be removed. Thank you, Angela. I learned a lot of seriousness in the same place he did. Your chief duties are to me and this island. That's true, but he's no risk, and he has potential. For this place, you must be joking. We had our disagreements about her, but even if I saw the use, you can't really mean the same about him, an artist. We're all artists. You are, Angela. Think of the things you've created here, and I think he'll surprise us. I surprised you once. You are made of quite different material. You know that, John. You are the only one who could have done all this. Flattery. You know we did it together. His age. Young enough, just about. What if he starts contacting people? It's too late, even if he does. I heard the smile in his voice. My word on the matter is final, Angela. Do not waste your time, or mine, arguing. Very well. As you're in such a decisive mood, I would like to know your thoughts about the release. There is almost no time to do it before we seal the island. It's in motion. I beg your pardon? She sounded scandalized like a maiden aunt. It's in motion. Without my arranging it? His voice was closer now, and I sensed him standing at the window, facing out. The scene would make a wonderful picture, I realized, to anyone observing us from across the lawn. Me, crouched beneath the window in darkness, him standing in it, lit by the taper before him, the bearer of light. I'm afraid so, Angela. I want control over this because I want to carry the responsibility. You really mean that? You've done it? Knight's voice had changed, become almost afraid. You lit the torch, I carry it. Someone wise once told me about the paramount importance of this first incision. I remember that well. Her voice was low. Good night, Angela. I had slipped away from the lodge as soon as their conversation ended, back to the tree line and the nearest path. The journey back to the cottage took another hour of walking. The occasional late-night cart passed me on the road, but whenever the driver greeted me, I smiled and declined a lift, claiming insomnia. I needed time to order my thoughts. I felt guilty. To hear John defending me like that against Angela showed me he must have my best interests at heart. I needed time, but it did not shake my resolve. I had come here chasing Kara alone, yet the spell of this place, why lie to myself, of John's company, had descended on me like a veil, one that grew steadily heavier, and I had sunk beneath it to the ground. I had found room in my heart for more than Kara, and she had clearly felt the same about me in the months before I arrived here. Where was she? And what had John set in motion? If she would just return for a day, if we could just spend a day with each other, nowhere, to clear the island from our veins and remember what it was to simply be together against the world. A faint hope, and I doubted now what good it could do. Things had grown more complicated since my arrival, since I had been gently brought into the small group of John's closest associates. How had it happened so fast? Yet here I was, on the verge of making something truly meaningful, and it was all thanks to him. The last few weeks seemed to break over my head then. I thought of the strangeness of this place. There were so many young people here. So many of the women were pregnant. There was the elephant with its artificial parents, my recreated studio, Fentiman's account of John's schooling, Jacob Mann, Bianca's treacherous hidden path down to the shore, the extra hex lurking in the woods. I had reached Francis and Joanna's cottage. The empty bed, deferred for a few hours, met me again, and I lay in it as still as if I was in my own grave. And that's the end of chapter 25. So things starting to get interesting. What's really been released? Is Kara actually still alive? I'm sure all these answers will come up in the last few chapters of the book. Hope you're enjoying it, and look forward to reading you more chapters very soon. Thanks.